administrations and a host of legislators spent over a decade and numerous rounds of public consultation agreeing the specific provisions of the National Conservation Act, which passed unanimously in 2013. The Act establishes the National Conservation Council that was created to promote and secure biological diversity and the sustainable use of natural resources in the Cayman Islands. Many in our community feel directly the continuing loss of Cayman's natural heritage and are growing increasingly concerned that our native habitats and unique plants and animals will not be known by the generations that follow us. At present, the Act provides the only legal means of giving effect to the constitutionally protected principles of sustainability, whereby social, economic, and environmental perspectives have equal weight at the table. The National Conservation Council has a mandate to ensure that we can continue to enjoy the magic of Cayman's biodiversity for many generations to come. But to be successful, we all must work together as a community to build and preserve the Cayman that we want and wish for our children to inherit.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the National Conservation Council to order. John, would you proceed with the any apologies?
Yes, sir, we have quorum, but there are no apologies were received in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interests of any members?
No, sir.
I think that's no.
No.
Okay. Moving on to the first item on the agenda, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. John, would you like to?
Mr. Chair, as I was absent from the meeting, I cannot contribute to the discussion other than to say that the climate change report as the appendix reflects what I submitted.
Thank you. John, would you talk us through the minutes, please?
Yes, sir. Minutes were circulated to members in advance. As noted, reports were received at the last minute. The climate change, the various environmental assessment boards. Council dealt with a few matters such as the fish pot, two-pot limit. The Seabrack Conservation Agreement. Issuing the updated Section 41 guidance notes. Approving the renewal of certain class of old spare gun previously expired spare gun licenses. The Seabird Species Conservation Plan and Consultation Report that were to go to Cabinet. And then the 2024 general meeting schedule.
Okay, thank you. And next item on our agenda, matters arising from previous minutes.
Councilman, I just want to vote to approve the
Ah,
minutes, sir.
yes, thank you. Would somebody kindly propose that?
I so move.
Thank you. Do we have a
I
seconder? Thank you,
second,
Patricia. Any against? That motion passes. So moving back to matters arising from previous minutes.
We had nothing to, the Department of Environment had nothing to raise from the last minute, sir.
Thank you. And moving on then to reports. Climate change. I understand Lisa said that she had nothing further to report. I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear what you said, Lisa.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I was just saying that I could contribute to the minutes of the last meeting because I was away at COP 28 in Dubai. And for the purposes of this meeting, I believe that the report stands. Nothing substantially has changed. And I believe that the report in its entirety has been captured in the 2023 annual report. So if any members have any questions on that, I can either discuss it here now or we can wait until we reach to that portion of the agenda. But just to say, in terms of item 1 on that report in regards to the draft climate change policy, just to remind members that the NCC via the DOE did contribute to that climate change report, the draft policy as went out to the public, and that the majority of the action items for 2023 and the 2024 goals and objectives have been captured substantially in the draft climate change policy, particularly under the section dealing with harmony with nature, and many of the things that we have discussed in the past. So I will leave that there, and as I said, if any members have any specific questions for me, please do ask them or raise them later on.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody? Not. Move on to Environmental Assessment Board's reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First up is the airports, the 3 airports, Grand Cayman Runway Extension into the North Sound, the Little Cayman Airfield relocation, and the Cayman Brac Runway widening. So we're at the stage now with those those EIAs where the Airports Authority are contracting with an environmental firm to start preparation of the terms of reference for the 3 environmental impact assessments, and they're just doing that, in their own time. So we will wait to hear from them. When we have draft terms of reference, then the next step will be for the EAB to review them and for them to go out to public consultation once we're okay with the consultation draft. The next up is the REGEN, or the Integrated Solid Waste Management Program, EIA, and what we can say about that is that the EAB submitted its review of the environmental statement for the REGEN Waste Management Facility on or around the 19th of March. We essentially have said that the final environmental statement is considered to be an adequate representation of the environmental effects of the project, and the non-technical summary should be referred to for a summary of the significant environmental effects identified as part of the EIA. The environmental management plan, which goes along with the environmental statement, is not yet a complete document, and that's down to the fact that the project itself hasn't reached financial closure. The EAB has no input or any knowledge of that process. But we were told by the REGEN party that they couldn't finalize the environmental management plan at this point because the project had not reached completion. So what we accepted was that the draft environmental management plan that was appended to the environmental statement is a high-level review of the implementation of the mitigation measures that the environmental statement recommends, and that we have requested that we continue to be involved in further reviews to finalize the EMP. We'll have all of the mitigation measures set out, who's responsible for implementing them, and a timeline. So that's ongoing. We're waiting to hear about that. The report will be on the National Conservation Council's website under the Waste Management EIA, if anybody is interested to see the full document, because we also lay out some areas of concern that are not within the scope of the EIA, for example. And I went through these with council in our last working group session, so don't propose to go over them here. But I would say that any member of the public who wants to see the final environmental review of the environmental statement, which was done by the EAB, can refer to the NCC's website under the EIA section. If it's not there right now, it will be very shortly. So that's that one. In terms of the east-west arterial, I just wanted to say that we are moving along with the EIA. The EAB has reviewed all but 2 now, I believe, of the technical chapters of the environmental impact assessment for the road, the east-west arterial. And I do want to maybe clarify 2 important things. The first is that I've been hearing a lot of commentary, we have been hearing a lot of commentary in the public domain about the environmental impact assessment itself and the terms of reference and the fact that this EIA will stop the road, etc. And I just wanted to reiterate that the terms of reference that were completed for the east-west arterial were completed with an understanding that the government had already taken a policy decision to build a road. So the EIA was never intended to compare a road as a solution to the traffic problems versus something else, like, say, a monorail or some other form of public transportation. So that was never the intent of the EIA. The EIA was always about trying to identify the most environmentally and socially responsible route for that road. So that continues to be our focus. We've done it. The EAB has basically done everything that we have said. The second thing I want to comment on is that the last chapter that the EAB reviewed for the EIA consultants and provided feedback on was the hydrogeology and the hydrology, the hydrology and hydraulics study that was being carried out by the NRA's own consultants outside of the EIA process. They took that outside of the EIA process, but it is informing the EIA. And I just want to say that there is a large amount of misunderstanding about the detail that is contained in those hydrology and hydraulics reports received from the consultants. So what we can say at this stage is that the consultants have confirmed that the data, the information, the level of detail they have provided in those reports will be sufficient for comparative purposes, so comparing the different routes, for example, in the EIA. So they're able to meet the requirements of the EIA. What the studies don't do, however, is provide enough information or detailed data for the NRA to do any kind of design work or engineering work on the roads. So our understanding really is that the level of detail and design is only at about 10% of the design specifications for construction plans. That means that there's a high-level analysis of preliminary horizontal and vertical geometry and typical sections for the roadway and the bridges. Our understanding further is that the project is going through, well, we know this, that the project is going through a shortlist evaluation to arrive at the preferred option for the roadway. And that once a preferred route is selected, the engineering design will then be further advanced to approximately 30%. So the idea that if there were no EIA, we have enough information now to design and construct this road is just simply not borne out by the facts. The facts are that the engineering, the level of data that has been supplied thus far in the hydrology and the hydraulics component of this road is not sufficient to design the road or build the road. So I just wanted to make that clear. What it is doing is allowing us to be able to compare the routes and the environmental impact assessment consultants to compare the routes. So I just wanted to make that really clear, that it is not the EIA that is holding up the construction of the road, and that seems to be the refrain that we are all hearing. Members of council, members of the DOE, other members in the public are asking about it. So I just wanted to clear that up. The next is the Port Zeus.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, before the director goes on, Mr. Chair, through you,
I'm sorry?
It's Lisa.
could I ask a question, Mr.
Sorry,
Chair?
yes, Lisa, I'm sorry. I think we've lost your image. Couldn't see you there.
Yeah. Can you see me now?
Yes.
See you now, thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to ask the director, the hydrology and the hydraulics study, is that available for viewing? I appreciate that it's outside of the EIA, and so it's not, I suppose, officially part of the EIA package of documents, but is that something that can be viewed at this point in time? Or do we have to treat it as information as part of the EIA? Right.
I'm not certain what the NRA's disposition is towards releasing that work now, Lisa. They certainly have provided it to us, to the EAB, and our law does say that all documents that form part of the environmental impact assessment, which I'm sure you know, are all meant to be publicly available. So certainly when the draft environmental statement comes forward, for example, all of the supporting documentation will have to be provided as part of that. So eventually it will be in the public domain. What I can't answer right now, because it is the NRA's study, it is not, like I said, they scoped the study outside of the EIA, and the consultants are working for the NRA and feeding the information into the EIA consultants. So I would bring it up with NRA and find out for you, Lisa. I'll ask the folks over at the NRA how they feel about having that work released to the public at this stage.
Correct. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay. So I was just going to go on to the Port Zeus, which is the proposed marina on Cayman Brac. The EAB have completed our review of their final submission. We did one review of the terms of reference. The consultants had to provide some additional wording and refine some of their approaches in the EIA. They've done that now. We've completed our review of their revised version, and that review is just undergoing some collation and quality control at the DOE, so that should be out within the next couple of days. Then finally, the K-Rock quarry, that EIA's the scoping opinion is still with the proponents of that project, and it is now up to them in terms of coming back with whether they want to proceed with the EIA or not. So that is not in our hands. I I think that's everything, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Gina. All right, moving on, we have new matters. Sane Net license renewal. Would you like to take that, John?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So council will recall at the general meeting on 14th January last year, council heard the application for the renewal of a CNET license. At the time, council took into account a variety of factors, such as that in 2022, the applicant had been found fishing with the net, which was not licensed at the time, and outside of the license conditions, particularly notifying the Department of Environment. That while the DOE accepted that this was purely an error on the part of the applicant, and so did not recommend prosecution through the DOE processes, it wasn't, the DOE didn't feel it was appropriate for the DOE to renew that permit under the delegated authority and referred it to council. Council decided that it should not be renewed for a year. That year has elapsed. The applicant put in their renewal request at the end of December last year. They still have a clean police record. DOE have no issues with the applicant or their application. But because it's a non-standard license renewal, the DOE referred it back to the NCC for consideration. At the January work group session, the council considered the application, decided to approve the permit at that time rather than waiting to the general meeting so the applicant wasn't having to wait until now before finding out whether or not they could get the license redone. And also sort of confirmed the delegation to the Department of Environment to just process the application as normal, and that henceforth the 2022 incident will not count as a reason for the license renewals to not be processed as normal by the DOE. So subsequent to that, the DOE issued the license renewal on January 26th. It's valid for the year. And just following up for council to ratify its decision today that, the decision that was taken on the 24th of January, that the license could be reissued as normal and as normal in the future.
All right, thank you, John. And do we have a draft motion for that ratification? If not, could somebody propose it, please?
Mr. Chair, I'll have a go. So I propose that council ratify its decision taken at the earlier meeting on January 24th, that the SaneNet license for the individual discussed at that point can be reissued now following the 1-year hiatus as a penalty, and that the offense that was recorded would not be counted towards non-renewal in the future. In other words, that the DOE can treat this as a normal renewal going forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I second the motion.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, anybody opposed to that?
I support.
Thank you, Patricia. Patricia
I
supports.
support it. I support it as well.
Thank you.
I support Lisa.
Thank you.
Supported.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to abstain because I was obviously involved in the issue.
I think that's everybody. Okay, then.
Tim Austin at DOE, I will abstain also. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Richard, online, I'll support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
All right, that's everybody then. The motion carries. Okay, moving on. The annual reports, is that next?
Yes, sir. So these are just both for council to approve to send to the minister to take to the Parliament. Unfortunately, we realized that we forgot to do the 2022 annual report when council went on hiatus in the middle of 2023 and was in Quorate. And I apologize, we forgot about it. So there is the annual report 2022, which has been circulated to members for members' consideration. And it just has the usual material of the relating to what the council did, through the year of 2021. And the status, and then what you hope to achieve the next year. So I don't know if council wants to look at anything in particular or just move straight to passing the annual report.
Does any member have an opinion on that? So could somebody please propose a motion that we accept the annual report for 2022?
I propose that we accept the annual report for 2022.
Thank you. Second. Anybody?
Mr. Chair, Tim Austin at DOE. I'm happy to second it. Anyone else?
Thank you, Tim.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair,
Go ahead.
could I just ask the Secretary, did the annual report 2022 contain feedback that was given previously by council members?
Yes, it should have. Yeah, anything that was given, the January, February period 2023 would have been included in this, yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Then I support, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I support.
Thank you.
I support.
Thank you.
I abstain. That's Richard.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you.
I support the report,
Thank you.
2022. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair,
Abstain,
Tim,
as I was not in committee at the time.
Tim Austin at DOE. I support also.
Thank you. Is anybody against? No, okay, then we will submit the annual report for 2022 and moving on to the annual report for 2023.
Yes, sir. So again, this is now last year's annual report, which was circulated to council. Again, it includes the standard purposes and composition of the council, including noting the new members and the sort of split council membership over 2023, given that council was, old council appointments expired and new ones occurred. And then the general activities of council throughout 2023 are highlighted, including invasive species work, particularly on the sister islands and the alien species regulations, the various EIAs that occurred last year, climate change, and the land acquisition that occurred with the Environmental Protection Fund last year through the Ministry of Lands.
Mr. Chair, with your indulgence,
Yes, go ahead, Lisa.
Mr. Secretary, in Chapter 4, that deals with the goals and objectives, I believe that should read in the first paragraph,
Yes.
ongoing operations for 2024 will include.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I was wondering for council members' consideration in section 2, protected species of that page, whether completion of the sea turtle conservation plan should also be added to our goals and objectives for the year,
Absolutely.
as that one is languishing as well.
Yeah. So maybe under A, Lisa, if we could say completion of the seabird and sea turtle conservation plans, that would work. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was all
Thank
for
you.
me.
John, you want to continue with?
Would you like me to keep scrolling through it, sir?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was just saying if you want to continue summarizing the annual report, or had you completed that?
I think that about completes it, sir, from us. It's just, again, if any of the members, when looking through it in advance of the meeting, had any other questions or issues that you wish to raise about anything.
Just to thank you for going back and adding the section on the results of the invasive species work on the sister islands that brought at a high level. Thank you.
So I'm not clear. We have some alterations to make the plan. Do we therefore not vote on?
I would
Passing
suggest for council's consideration that given the simplicity, council could approve it as amended now, and then it could just go to the minister when I make those dual changes.
Okay, thank you, John. So if that's the case, could somebody kindly propose that?
I'd like to move that the 2023 annual report, as amended, be approved.
Thank you.
I second that. Second that.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you.
I support.
Support it as well.
Thank you.
I support.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you.
Richard here, I abstain.
Tim Austin, DOE, I support.
Thank you.
I support Lisa.
Thank you. Do you have everybody's vote there, John?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I think we accept the plan as passed. Right, moving on, we have the Cayman Sage draft conservation plan to consider.
Yes, sir. So as council will recall, the Cayman sage is a small flowering herb that was described previously, quite a while ago in the Cayman Islands, then thought to have gone extinct in the wild, rediscovered in 2007, but subsequently this wild population has apparently died out. However, when it was found, seeds were collected from it, grown at the Botanic Park, where they have multiple generations, but also planted out in a variety of places, including being distributed to members of the public. It's still critically endangered if you apply the IUCN Red List categorization to it. This species conservation plan has been put together mainly with the objective to get a self-sustaining population of this Cayman sage in the wild again, but to ensure an abundant population is in cultivation to protect that the species exists still. And that's really the first step, but we want to support that ongoing first step through this plan. What it would say is, in short, that people can continue to cultivate and propagate the sage. If anybody wishes to sell it or distribute it commercially, such as the Botanic Park, or private persons who have it, that would require a permit, as well as would anybody looking to outplant it into open areas, into the wild, just so that we can make sure to monitor that as it happens, and everybody can learn from these experimental attempts, because it being so rare, the plant biologists, if you'll excuse the phrase, aren't completely positive exactly under what conditions it will best thrive in the wild again. Obviously, anyone wishing to actually just have it in their yards will not need a permit, and will continue doing public education and outreach about the plant. But really, this conservation plan is about setting up that people can keep it in the yards without a permit, but anyone looking to do anything more advanced than that will be done through a permitting system, just so the critically endangered remnant population in captivity can best be managed. There is no critical habitat currently proposed, because we don't know if any left in the wild, and any restoration will probably try and happen in areas where the land is protected in some way, shape, or form. But the next step, if council is still supportive of these goals and this plan, would be for council to approve it to go to public consultation. And so when council is ready to discuss it, we would suggest that the proposal be that to request the DOE to take the draft conservation plan through public consultation as required in the Act, or more than that, so that council can then consider the feedback in the draft plan in keeping with the Act.
And again, do we have a draft motion, or somebody want to propose that?
Yeah, I'll move it.
I will second it.
Propose that the National Conservation Council request the Department of Environment to take the draft Cayman Sage Conservation Plan through public consultation that meets or exceeds the requirement of the Act, and that Council then considers the public feedback and the draft plan for possible adoption in keeping with Section 17 of the Act.
Thank you.
Seconded by Lucille.
Thank you, Lucille.
I support.
Mr. Chairman, I think Lisa wants to speak on this.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I just wanted to ask if the plan as drafted at the moment was drafted in consultation with the Botanic Park, or is the consultation with the Botanic Park part of the public consultation process more broadly?
Formal consultation with Botanic Park would be part of the wider public consultation. This grew out of the DOE setting up to re-permit the Botanic Park for their ongoing keeping and sale of the salvia, and we recognized that it was a good opportunity to actually just put the whole thing on a conservation plan footing, rather than having a couple of permits and everybody with it in their yard being unpermitted, but doing the right thing, but technically breaking the law, which would make no sense. So I don't want to say we've consulted with them, but we have been working with them. We're trying to support their activity in doing this. So yeah.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, through you also, just before we take the vote, unless other people have questions, I just want to clarify and just put on the written record that Cayman sage is an endemic plant, means it only occurs here. Actually, on Grand Cayman, it doesn't occur in the other two islands. So we just hadn't sort of made a big song and dance about that when we were going through the conservation plan, but that is one of the main reasons that we're trying to get this plant as widely distributed as possible again, because it is an endemic plant that is completely unique to Grand Cayman.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, though, if it's only found on Grand Cayman,
As far as we know.
Is it legal for somebody to grow it in the sister islands?
It would have to be under permit again.
It would, so technically it would be under permit. I would need to, that's one of the things we can double check with the plan, but I suspect we would advise against it. Just, again, because if it's a single island endemic, we would recommend keeping it to that island. But it might be that something like that could be done under permit if it was to act as a refugia, if it was felt it needed to be done that. But at this time, I think the recommendation would probably be to keep them all in Grand Cayman.
Thank you. And I think Gina already made a proposal, and it was seconded. And would the rest of the council please vote on this?
I so vote.
Thank you.
I support.
Thank you.
I support.
Thank you.
Tim Austin, DOE, I support this.
Thank you.
Farm I'll just support.
Thank you.
In favor.
And I abstain. That's Richard.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to abstain because I was involved in reviewing this.
Okay, thank you.
I support, Mr. Chair. Lisa.
Thank you. Okay, so I think that's carried. The next meeting of the council, 19th of June, 11th of September, 4th of December, on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. in this building, to be broadcast live on DOE YouTube, which brings us to number 7, any other business. Does any member have any other business they wish to bring up?
Just a comment, really, Mr. Chair, that at the beginning of our meeting, the video was a lovely production, and it was very nice to hear Mr. Mack's voice once again.
Yeah,
Thank you, Lisa.
yeah.
I agree. Thank you for that.
Yes, that was lovely.
Very, very nice.
Okay, with no other business, shall I declare the meeting at an end?
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Several government administrations and a host of legislators spent over a decade and numerous rounds of public consultation agreeing the specific provisions of the National Conservation Act, which passed unanimously in 2013. The Act establishes the National Conservation Council that was created to promote and secure biological diversity and the sustainable use of natural resources in the Cayman Islands. Many in our community feel directly the continuing loss of Cayman's natural heritage and are growing increasingly concerned that our native habitats and unique plants and animals will not be known by the generations that follow us. At present, the Act provides the only legal means of giving effect to the constitutionally protected principles of sustainability, whereby social, economic, and environmental perspectives have equal weight at the table. The National Conservation Council has a mandate to ensure that we can continue to enjoy the magic of Cayman's biodiversity for many generations to come. But to be successful, we all must work together as a community to build and preserve the Cayman that we want and wish for our children to inherit.